Hello everyone. With the party last night, I suppose you might be a little sleepy, but I'll try to be loud enough and try to be as entertaining as possible to keep you awake. Thank you for getting up early and coming to this talk. Like it was said, I'm going to be talking to you about Textmode and more precisely about Textmode demos. Little bit of myself. I'm known in the demo scene as Barzul of Northern Dragons and Balls. I've been doing Textmode demos for almost 10 years, and I now organize TMDC each year, which I didn't create. It was created by Sol quite many years ago. So briefly why I'm here to tell you to make Textmode demos because they're cool, and to break that myth that says that Textmode demos are exactly the same as regular demos with an ASCII filter on top, which it isn't true. You could see it like that, you could try to do it, but it won't give you something as good as it should be. So what's a Textmode demo? It's a demo. Anyone here by a show of hand that never saw any Textmode demo? Just before we continue. A couple of them. Do you know what a demo is? Show of hand, those who knows. And those who didn't raise their hand, so they don't know. All right. Demos are little non-interactive kind of videos run real time, demonstrating demos, the skills of those who made them. About Textmode demos, they are specifically made for console output. Most computers have text-only output. If you, for example, take your Android phone and you do the complex stuff like going into like routing it, stuff like that, you end up in text mode only interfaces. And if you go into older computers, like every PC has some kind of BIOS mode where it's only text. These days, it's kind of more hidden with just simple splash screen before. But yeah, so older computers had, some had only text output, and people wanted to make demos out of that. So it grew from there. So you can see like your regular output, and some people would like, like I said, make demos out of that, so it gives you graphics, which are basically using every character just like you would use a tile. For example, there's been games made like that. For example, here is Dwarf Fortress that uses characters like they would use tiles, like for example in the Super NES or stuff like that. And you could actually tweak those characters to make any shape you would like, tweak the colors to have more colors, and you would actually end up with something like that, which is actually text mode, but tweaked so much that you don't realize it is. Nowadays, it's kind of not really useful because every device you've got have a graphic mode. So we won't be talking too much about that. We'll be sticking to the DOS or Windows console, which has 16 colors, all very ugly. It has 80 by 50 characters, so it's very, very low resolution. And what is fun is that with the advent of popularity of widescreens, 16 by 10 monitors are kind of popular, and it's exactly the ratio, the same. It gives you square pixels. It's the same ratio as the 80 by 50 characters. So it's kind of fun. So yeah, we'll be talking about this awesome ASCII scope technology. And if we get back, you see the rainbow of colors. That's basically the colors we're dealing with. So there's quite a bit of challenges, mostly about design. It's kind of hard to make something look good with those constraints, but it can be interesting. One of them is the scale. With the low resolution, you've got to make something really big to have it show well and be understandable through those very few pixels. For example, we've seen in the NC compo a couple of days ago, 2 days ago. That's what they do in NC drawing. They make it very, very long, and every screen you see is just a small part of the whole thing. So you can do something kind of more high-res than what you can display at once. It was also used in very older demos. Here it's Dope by Complex, which starts with just complex written in super huge, big scroller that scrolls slowly. But yeah, it makes for a picture that looks very high-res. And here it was 300 by 200 resolution. So the scale is important. And there's also the colors. Those are our 16 colors. And thanks to Windows, before when it was on DOS, the palette was slightly different. It was slightly less saturated, slightly less colder color. But when Windows arrived, they kind of changed the palette a little bit. So you've got the dark yellow, which turns kind of green instead of orangey like it was. It was more like the one you see in Word up. So those are your colors. But you don't have to use only one color at a time. You can mix them up. For example, there, you can see just a gradient going from one color to the other, mixing with the characters. And you can see that there are some more interesting colors that just can get through when you mix them. For example, here I just shifted, like when you mix exactly two colors together, you can have some really nice mixes. Some will make good gradient. For example, the yellow and green, or the green and cyan, will make very smooth gradient. You won't see too much that it's two color mixing together. But on the other side, you can see the yellow and the red, which makes it very, very noisy. You see the difference. So it can be a good idea to go with those. For example, the magenta and red gives you some rich pink, which can be very interesting. And you can have go anywhere in the gradient and play with that, and it will show well. There's also the shapes that are important, and it can depend on your converter. The converter is the part of your software, the part of your demo that will take what you calculated in your array, in your bitmap, your array of pixels, and converting them to characters. So for example, the first one you see, this converter is much better with stuff that is blurry and very good with gradients and stuff like that. So if you have something that is good with this, go with it and do something that is, shapes that are blurry and things like that, gradients. If your converter is only good for blocky stuff, then go with it. And you can have something really cool with just flat colors. And there's also subsampling that I will talk more later. That is, if your converter supports it, go with it and exploit that as much as you can. And there's the characters themselves you can play with. For example, here, the first one is only with characters that have gradient patterns in them. So it gives that simple look. Next to it, with the big green, the big red, they use many more characters just to give different weights and have a nice gradient of different reds. There's also people playing, the people from Edelmai group. They did it quite a while back. They started playing with only specific shapes. So for example, here, I don't see it there, but it's just points and dashes and round stuff. So it gives a specific look instead, and something much less noisy than, for example, the red screen. And you can mix things together. The last one, the black, red, and white, which is from a demo that was released last November. You can see that it's, I think, one of the first demo to think about doing that, and it's kind of very cool. So they have the shading block characters for the red parts, making it very smooth, and the other white part has a pattern of blocks, which helps to differentiate every shapes. And there's a lot of potential to play with that kind of tiling. There's also the big part about how you should code your demo, your converter mostly, because the rest could be anything. But yeah, you need a converter, and there's many available. You don't have to code your own, but you can if you want. And if you code your own, there's a lot of possibilities, like we saw in the previous slide. If you want to find one that is available, there's TextFX by Sol, there's libcaca that was very, very popular. But the more it goes, the more there are, and you can just Google it, actually, and you'll find a couple of them. But like I said, making your own can be very, very gratifying if you're into programming, because it's kind of simple stuff, very visual, so you have it's rewarding, I would say. You don't have to just code in the black for days before having a result. And about color conversion, there's a couple of things to do. The big one is mixing the color. So how you go from 16 colors to any possible color. You can actually, there are different ways of cheating or doing stuff more properly. You could go with gradients, or you could do it real time to do nice effects, or you could have pre-calculated tables. And under that slide, I've put something I wanted to talk about also is that we're not the first people to do color mixing with different colors that you see at the same time. We can learn stuff from old painters. Here's is from a painting from Seurat with its only close-ups, but the pointillists at the time were playing with that because they didn't want the paint to mix together and become more gray and less saturated. They could have much more vivid colors, doing just different points of colors next to each other. And there's also the Impressionists that did stuff quite similar to that. They didn't mix the color well on their palette. They just pick colors, one and the other, and put them on their canvas. And from afar, it looks like it's red, but if you get closer, you actually not red, but orangey. But if you get much closer, it's gonna be made from red and yellow in different proportions. There's also something that we can learn from that, and it's quite interesting. We could do a big talk only on that. It's the principle of, if you look at the red sun on the gray-blue background, both the red and the gray are of the same value in luminosity, but the color is very different. And what it does is, when it goes to your eye, it's not picked up by the same part of your eye. The eye has one part that will see the luminosity and the other that will more focus on the tints. So it kind of fucks up the brain because there's two different messages at once. One saying, oh, it's just plain, and the other saying, no, it's very different. I see a huge contrast. And it's something we can do when we're doing the Textmode demos. If you look at those examples, they use very different colors for example, the character and its background. And if we wanted to do that cautiously, we could really design something to make the eye focus on one part of the screen more than another. It hasn't been done really so far, but it could be something to play with, to experiment. So that was just a parenthesis that I think fits in this part of the talk, but yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. If I go back, yeah. All right. Sorry. You'll be playing when coding. You'll be playing a lot with color distances. For example, here, when you match the colors together, two of our 16 colors, we match them together to have something that looks like we're looking for. You have to test all your colors and pick the closest one, but it's a distance function. Like we all know, it's x, y, and z squared. But what defines the x, y, and z? That's the big question. There's different color spaces, and there's a lot to search into that. A lot of searches have been done through the years. And there's different color spaces. You have the red, green, blue that would be obvious, but might not be the best one. A lot of people have been, for example, libcaca relies on an HSV model. But both the HSV and the HSL, the difference between those, maybe you can see, is that you either at the maximum luminosity or value, you're either fully saturated or you're just white. And both are kind of not optimal. Give either too importance on saturated colors or too much importance on the white. But there's people who made some really good researches on that, and they came up with nonlinear RGB. The dude in question is Tjadmer Remersma. I put the link. They actually, the guy, he just made up a program to show colors to people and asking them to pick the closest color to another. And playing with either HSV model or UV model or different color spaces. There was some were very close to what the human will pick, but some were really, really different. For example, the dark blues, the blues in general are really dark, but the eye sees a lot of difference between different blues. So if there's blue in a color, it will have a lot of importance in them. Same for the red. If it's brighter, the eye will discern them quite a lot. But if it's too dark, it will all be the same. So he came up with this, which is based on RGB, and it's nonlinear. And there's some very specific case kind of patched into it to really be as close as possible as the human eye. And he also proposes this code snippet to make it very fast. It's more approximative, but it's one of the best color distance I've encountered, and it's fast and accurate at the same time. So search for that if you're just into color distances and stuff like that. Even if it's not for Textmode demos, it can be applied to a variety of things. Also there is subsampling. Elite people do subsampling, like I've written. For example, the ASCII and ANSI artists have been doing that for ages. When I say subsampling, I'm just saying that, for example, you put more shapes. You define the shape better than just using the character as a pixel. So, for example, there's in the demo drawing, you can see there's going to be characters such as probably these and just commas and semicolon, stuff like that, just because it completes the shape. And from a distance, you really see a very straight and very defined line. Next to it is from 8088 Corruption by Trickster of Hornet. This was basically taking a movie, video part, and just calculating ASCII character combinations, just trying everything possible to match as close as it could. So it wasn't done real time. It was a very, very long process of pre-calculation. But you can see that in this picture, the resolution of the characters is really, really low. It's lower, actually, than our Windows console because it was running on a junior PC. But yeah, the subsampling there makes it possible to have very very sharp lines, for example, in the lower part, the round part of the Eiffel Tower. So just for fun, I will show you different tests for that using different algorithms or libraries that exist. Those are test pictures that I stolen from Sol, who has a great page explaining his TextFX library and how we came up with it. It's really inspiring, actually. That's his just black and white subsampling mode. It's really nice when you look at the circles. You can see it's very sharp. The Lena picture is kind of sharp and high-res, much less than the actual picture, but it's quite good for the resolution. This is this one is mine, just for comparing. The difference being that I added color to it. It's not only black and white. It's using the whole range, and it's also mixing, actually, just brute. One character is 1 pixel, and subsampling. So you just have to find the edge, and if there's enough contrast in your block, you do subsampling. If not, use the color. So this is the resolution with subsampling, and next is libcaca. As you can see, there's a lot of difference, mostly on the circles that gets very, very blurry. And also in the girl's picture, if you look at the feathers on the hat, you can see that you have quite a lot more resolution in there like this than like that. So subsampling is kind of not so hard and can really increase the quality of your picture. The secret to subsampling, it's tables, and you don't have to stick to power of 2. For example, I was going with grids of 3 by 3. So what it gives you is that all the diagonals, the dashes, the pipes, stuff that is centered in the middle of your character, you will be able to use that. Which for 2 by 2 grid, it just wouldn't make sense. And like I was explaining, mixing them with colors is quite easy, actually. You just have to make the 2 modes and switch from one to the other. I won't give you the code I'm using for calculating the subsampling, not because I don't want to, but because it wouldn't be useful, because it wouldn't be so readable, and etc. But just to explain you how it works is that I went with a 3 by 3 grid and sticking 6 shades, 6 different shades. It gives a table of, I think, was 150 kilobytes of combinations. So there's a lot of different combinations possible, and for each combination, you just find the closest character to approximate that pattern. So then it's just a matter of waiting if there is in your block enough contrast, and if there's contrast, what's the pattern of the contrast, and from that you just pick the right character. So it's kind of easy, actually. And there's what to do with our converters, and we know how to design, but we need content. There's been a lot of different things done in Textmode demos, actually. And the nice thing is that 80 by 50, it's, like I shown, it's 4 milliseconds per pixel, whereas Full HD is much, much less. And I say we don't have a GPU because we're not going with the standard graphics interface, so it's kind of hard. You could actually just render on the GPU and go, just render on an off-screen buffer, grab that, convert it, and show on screen. The problem is with older system like Windows XP. Windows XP, when you switch to full screen mode, it would just kill the video driver, so you would lose your OpenGL context or whatever you have on your graphics hardware. So it's not reliable. On modern hardware, like on modern systems, like Windows 7, for example, and 8.1 and all that, they just don't allow anymore to switch to full screen. So they solved that problem. So that's why I'm saying we don't have the GPU. We'll see as time goes if people want to keep Windows XP compatibility or not. So the CPU has lots of time, and it can also be much friendlier to code on than having to learn all the graphics API and stuff like that. I was actually talking to prepare this talk with people who did remarchers in their demos, and I was asking, did you try to use CUDA or OpenCL or stuff like that to just accelerate stuff? And they didn't even think about that because they had so much time to waste on the CPU because of that low resolution. So yeah, what people have done, like I was saying, they did some remarching or also retracing. It's also a good opportunity to just make your own software 3D engine because it's fun to make and it's something that we less and less do now that we have acceleration. And you could also just stick to 2D. What is good with, yeah, and it's also pretty forgiving. For example, this screen or also this, which is, you can see that robot is the one used on the other side. The low resolution makes it quite easier and forgiving, and it forces you to think about the big picture rather than the details. So it's nice. And yeah, further experiment, like I said, CUDA, OpenCL, and all that. We haven't seen that being made in Textmode demos, but maybe it could, maybe it couldn't because of the driver issue, which I haven't looked into, but could be actually interesting to do only for the idea that the GPU doesn't render directly to the screen. So in short, the API calls to set up a console are minimal. That's what we've been programming on for ages. Just launching a console application is very, very simple, much simpler than having to set up an OpenGL context and whatever you have. So from there, it's just fun. You code your stuff, and it's visual instantly, very rewarding. And design-wise, it forces you to think about the big picture, not the details. The characters you've got will fill all the details you could waste your time on. So you focus on what's important. So yeah, you just can't get lost into too many details and waste your time. So I would say it's a good exercise for people that are into demos but maybe haven't done any yet, or they are not sure how to start, where to start. It can be a very good exercise to just focus on design, think about your colors, think about your shapes, and focus on big important stuff. So that's it, and we can go to the questions if anyone have any.